happy Monday, Blue Starr family.
Yeah, amen.
Welcome back to another episode of the Big Things from the Big Story podcast. We're on week 3. We've made it. We've made it 3 weeks, and just so you know, very proud of everybody who's been participating, reading along in the one-year Bible, both in the Old and New Testament, reading a psalm and proverb every day. 3 weeks is an accomplishment, so congratulations. Thanks for being with us. Just a reminder, if you're just now starting with this one-year Bible, go ahead and pick one up or grab it in the Bible app. And just pick up where you're at today and read along with us. You know, you can start on the 20th of January, and it's okay. And you can circle back to the beginning at the end if you'd like. But thank you for participating with us and reading with us. And we've got just a few things we want to share with you today. I've got Craig back with me today. You're back.
Good to be back.
Yes, sir. If you don't know, Craig is the minister out at Hope Harbor, very involved here at Blue Starr, and I'm sure you guys have seen him around and met him multiple times. But thank you again, sir, for being with us today.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Blue Starr family.
Well, this week is January 19th, and we are going to focus on what we read January 12th through January 18th, mainly looking at Genesis chapter 26 through 38, which, spoiler alert, a lot happens in Genesis this week. And in Matthew, following the ministry of Jesus in Matthew chapter 9 through 12. In the Old Testament, we kind of transition from person to person to person. We started with Isaac as we began this week, the son of Abraham, and we transitioned to his son, Jacob. And then right yesterday, as we were reading, we go focusing more on Jacob's son, Joseph. And so we've kind of transitioned between these three characters and full stories of all of these characters that we've read. And so we see kind of started off the week with Jacob and Esau. Esau, I don't know if you should say surrendering his birthright or Jacob tricking him out of his birthright.
Yes. And yes.
Yes and yes. So, you know, Jacob stealing that birthright from his brother. And then we follow Jacob as he flees over to Laban and follow that story for many, many years. Him getting his wife Leah and then Rachel, and then finally leaving Laban and returning to Esau. And along the way, you know, wrestling with God, getting his name changed from Jacob to Israel, and, you know, finally returning to Esau. And then we follow his story after that with his sons and his 12 sons, his favorite son, Joseph, that we kind of concluded this week with. So that's what we read in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, we're following the story of Jesus. Where we picked up this week, we saw Jesus doing a lot of miracles. I mean, healing the paralytic, the woman, Jairus' daughter, restoring sight to the blind, just a lot of miracles and healing, and then also commissioning the 12 apostles to come and follow him. And also a lot of teaching from Jesus in his sermons. This is where we read Jesus teaching about, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." And so a lot of great teaching from Jesus, as well as just following his story along. This week, we read about the Sabbath day and his apostles plucking the grain and his declaration over Lord of the Sabbath as well. And man, to the Pharisees, that's a big declaration. So just a lot of good stuff, both in the Old and New Testament, as we read this week in the One Year Bible. Is there anything that I missed in the summary there, Craig?
No, I think you learn a lot about the nature of the Son of God, our Lord and Savior, and his dealing with legalism and people that are focused on a set of rules versus the heart of God.
Yeah.
And I think there's still a lot for us to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. We never struggle with that today, do we? No, not at all.
No.
So this week, as we read in the One Year Bible, I want to remind you that we have the Facebook group now with discussion opportunities galore. So that'll be posted below in the video comments, as well as just the comments on these videos. I saw lots of good comments last week. Just connect with us. Share what you see, what big things you see in the big story as you're reading it this week.
Yeah.
Well, I told Craig that I wanted to bring a little levity, a little fun to the beginning of the show. And so my question for you is, at any time during your ministry, was there ever anything that was embarrassing or humorous from your perspective?
One of my favorite stories, I was a youth and family minister in a little place called Idabel, Oklahoma, the Bypass Church of Christ there. And I loved the kids there. There was a really awesome group of about 30 young people. And to tell you the caliber of kids we had, one of them is actually a brain surgeon in like Arizona or something like that.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
There were several that were not brain surgeons, however, but we had this one boy, always pretty quiet, and I was teaching Sunday morning Bible class, must have been about 25 kids in the class, and just everything going very well. And he walks up to me after class. He said, "Thank you for the class this morning, Greg." And I said, "Well, yeah, thank you for that." He says, "I only have one thing to mention to you." I said, "What's that?" He says, "Well, your pants were unzipped all the way through class." I went,
no.
And that mortifies me, and you're trying to be a leader of young people and all that, and it's just super embarrassing is not even the word for it.
And this teenage boy is the one that
caught it, and I said, "Okay, how obvious was it?" He said, "Well, it just was obvious when you had your hands in your pockets." Oh, okay. Well, did I have my hands in my pockets very often? He said, "All the way through class."
Oh no.
I went, okay. So I go home and I'm frustrated with this, pair of pants and all that. And anyway, I put that pair of pants on and I'm, just reaching down past the belt just to make sure.
Double check every time.
Yep. We're all good. Taught Bible class. Young man walks up to me. I said, "Well, how'd we do today?" He goes, "Well, it was okay except for your pants were unzipped all the way through class." I went, "No." I triple check. It's like, he says, "No, it opened from the bottom."
Oh man, you just couldn't win.
Oh man. And so sure enough it had, and I made my way to the restroom and, tried to reconnect whatever went wrong with I think I gained a few pounds, that might've been part of the problem there. But, anyway, I was also waiting on the Lord's table that day.
Oh man. Yeah. And
so, I'm sitting on the front pew, moments away from us doing communion. I've got a little communion talk and other things to do, and songbook on my lap, and I look down, and to my horror, my pants are unzipped again.
Just can't win with these pants.
Oh, and so I make my way stealthily as you can out of the auditorium to the recording booth, and it cleared out. Before I got there, it was great, and fixed it. And just in time to wait on the Lord's table, and I'm standing in front of about 200 people, and I can feel it. Maybe it was just a weird sense, but I can feel it going pop, 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 and like, no. So anyway, long story short, came home. I don't know if you believe in demon-possessed pants, but I really thought these were, and my wife heard me as those pants were chunked against the wall as hard as I could, saying, "Never again."
I would imagine those pants didn't make it to another Sunday.
No, they never saw another Sunday. Some other, yeah.
Well, in ministry, as a preacher, there's been so many times that are slightly embarrassing. The story I'm going to tell is kind of similar to yours, but I will say I have learned to keep an extra dress shirt and pants in the office because I've had some situations. One time I spilled coffee all over myself. And I didn't have my backup shirt, so I, went in the bathroom, washed it up, and was under the hand dryer in the bathroom, and it worked. I was ready to go by communion. So, but the story that is probably the most embarrassing and funny for me is a few years ago, I had a sermon where, very odd for me to do, but I turned around in the middle of the sermon and I faced the back wall, like where in most church buildings the baptistry is, or the big windows behind you. And it was some gimmick, I was talking to the church building, but little did I know that when I turned around and showed everyone the fact that the back of my pants had ripped open on the corner of my back pocket. And thankfully, it wasn't super noticeable unless you were paying attention, but some people were paying attention. And so there was this sweet lady, she might be watching, Sandra, who rode with us home every Sunday in the church van. And she was like, "Oh yeah, your pants were ripped wide open on the back there." And so thankfully, I got rid of those pants. I also concluded that I don't buy Wranglers from Walmart because they're not the same quality of Wranglers.
Well, there you go.
And,
Little known fact.
And now I check the back of my pants before I get up to preach every Sunday.
Not that I'm paranoid, but now I will.
Yeah, you got to check the front. Oh, man. All the pants.
You think it's easy being a minister. It's not. You know, Satan picks on your pants. So...
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought it might be a little fun to bring a little levity. I'll have to come up with a good question for my guest next week and see what embarrassing, funny stories he has about something.
Well, I think there's got to be a lot of Bible characters that, you know, if they had a chance to replay as we do and see what they said or see what they did, they'd go cringe. I mean, it's just terrible. You know, we look at Esau in the story this week, and I did what for a bowl of beans?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's a big deal. It's not just that, you know, he got a certain seat at the table, but, you know, so many things were connected on this. And he said, well, I'm going to starve to death anyway. You might as well, you know, you're not going to starve to death.
A little dramatic.
Dramatic. And there's a little bit of that in us as well, too.
And I love this week at Blue Starr here, our kids on Wednesday got to learn about that story and got a bowl of soup, and it was a bowl of ramen noodles. And there was a lot of great, fun discussion all week long since that. Obviously, it probably wasn't ramen noodles back in Esau's day. It wasn't
authentic. Yeah.
But it was just really cool to hear them get to learn and reenact that story in some degree on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So without further ado, what was something big that you saw out of this week's reading, either out of Genesis 26 through 28 or Matthew 9 through 12?
The Matthew has a story it tells, and it's one of my favorite stories out of the New Testament. It has to do with the paralytic guy. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's part of your discussion or not, but I love that story. And whatever the backstory is, it's got to be interesting. A young man paralyzed. Well, he wasn't born that way. He wouldn't have all the friends that he has, but his friends bring him. And maybe it was one of those mountain bike experiences or maybe tree climbing and chasing girls or whatever it might have been. But, you know, he falls, he's paralyzed, and there's just no future for a person like that. And the compassion from his friends to say, hey, and Matthew doesn't have the whole story to it, but, you know, they dig a hole in the roof.
Yeah.
In order to lower him down, because the house is full of people there to hear the stories from Jesus, and the Pharisees there to correct Jesus and catch him in his errors and all that. And then boom, all of a sudden this dust and hay and whatnot all falling through and just choking the air in that little room, and a fella starts being lowered down by his friends.
Yeah.
And I love that, because it's such an evangelistic mindset, is to, you know, understand we're lowering our friends before, you know, the Savior of the world, for them to discover hope and healing and blessing and all that as well. And I love in that storyline, the Pharisees just go off on it, and they're just all upset about what Jesus has done and all that, and he hadn't even started yet, and he says your sins are forgiven, and they're like,
how dare
what?
you?
Yeah. And the Chosen show, I love an episode where they challenge him that only God can do that, and he looks at the camera and kind of winks a little bit, and he says, funny you'd say that, you know. And I love that part of it. But just to show you that I have the power to forgive, get up, take your mat, and walk. Mm-hmm. And he walked and parted the crowd as he went out to join his friends outside again. And I just love that story, and you know, all the meanings and whatnot that I read into it anyway.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm really glad that you're going to the New Testament, because I feel like we've neglected talking about the New Testament on the podcast. It's not on purpose. It's just because I think we're more...
week 3.
Yeah, that's true. We're more familiar with the story of Jesus. And so, you know, maybe it's less surprising and there's less details that we haven't caught before because we study it a little more thoroughly. So I appreciate you bringing that forward. The paralyzed man, especially the faith of his friends, you know, not only in believing in him, but they had to have faith in Jesus, the one they were, you know, getting him to themselves in order to be
risk. Yeah. First of all, they're going to drop their friend on his head through the roof. You get the homeowner's going to be upset that you dug a hole in his roof.
That's where my brain always goes.
Always all these obstacles, but don't we have a lot of obstacles too that we put together in our head that this will happen, that will happen. What if they ask about this and all that? And we forget that God has done all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's big.
Yeah, he's big. It's a big God that we serve.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to hang out in the Old Testament a little bit, and then you might have a few comments on that as well. But, man, just looking at all these different characters, we've moved from Isaac to Jacob, and then we kind of concluded with Joseph. And I could talk about Joseph a lot, but probably hold that off until next week. But Jacob, the story of Jacob, there's just so many powerful little things in the story. Yeah. Like we talked about already, Jacob tricking his brother and then tricking his father for the birthright. And Craig and I were talking before it started. It's like you kind of get the feeling that Jacob is a little bit of a trickster. He's a little sleazy in getting what he wants. Slimy is the word that comes to my mind. Yeah, slimy. He's like, and so we see that at the beginning of his story with Jacob and Esau tricking Isaac into giving the birthright to Jacob. And, his mom's involved in all of that too. Yeah. And his mom is actually the one that sends him off to Laban's house for safety. She basically says, Esau's going to kill you if you don't get out of here. And I feel kind of bad for Isaac in the beginning of that story as well, because I just noticed this time the weight that he felt when Esau comes in, and he's like, how could have you given, I've already sold my birthright. Now he's taken my blessing. How could you have given my blessing to Jacob? And Isaac basically says, what's been done's been done. Yeah. And I mean, we really get the picture that he is on his deathbed when this is happening. He's ill, he's sick, he can't do anything. And this is the weight that's put on him right there at the end. And so, Jacob flees to Laban, and it's hard not to feel like, well, you got what was coming to you, Jacob, with your also very slimy Laban, your uncle.
Yeah, I want to marry the pretty one.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Oh, it wasn't the pretty one. It feels so bad for Leah. But he works 7 more years on top of his 7-year commitment for Rachel. Yeah. And we see both Leah and Rachel being his wives. And by the time that, again, Laban is kind of slimy as well. By the time that Jacob finally gets the opportunity to leave, you really kind of invested in this story of these two guys trying to get ahead, and which one are you rooting for? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And the girls, one of them takes the household gods.
Yeah.
And some other things.
I think it was actually Rachel that took the gods. Yeah. And Laban chases after them and says, hey, you stole from me. Jacob is like, no, we didn't. And it's interesting, because God's hand was in this, right? It's interesting how God, let Jacob walk away from that freely. I mean, he very well could have let Laban find all of the idols and made Jacob come back and serve another 20 years. But he didn't. He let Jacob continue on in his story, which is really, really powerful, because where Jacob is going from Laban's, and he struggles with this the whole way, is back to Esau. Yeah. And he's got to face his brother that, and I'm sure in his mind, is the biggest wrong in the entire world. There's never been anything worse than what I've done to my brother. And he is going to kill me with armies when I return. And so in the midst of that story, we see Jacob wrestling with God. We see God continuing to say, hey, go back to your brother. In the midst of wrestling with God is where Jacob gets his name changed to Israel. Meaning he wrestled with God. Yeah. And, if you've read the rest of the story that we'll get to, Israel is a very significant name, the nation. And so we'll follow these two nations continually throughout the story. And it's so wild to me, and I don't know why, that when Jacob gets back to Esau is not ready to kill him. Yeah. He has armies. He has men. I mean, Jacob sees the 400 men. Yeah. And he's like, that's the army that's going to kill me. But that's not what Esau has the men for. Yeah. He has them to bring his brother home. And,
protect him.
I love that Jacob's trying to set up all of this strategy to, maybe not get killed. He's like, I'll send this camp
wave
and
of
then this
goats
camp.
and the wave of sheep.
Yeah. I'll give him this gift and this gift.
All my kids, look at all that. You can't kill me now.
Yeah.
I've got kids.
I'll scatter us out across, which one's he going to go to? And finally, it's like almost out of frustration when Esau finally gets to his brother. He's just so grateful that he's returned. And I think there's a lot of power in that Old Testament story of how we often are like Jacob. Maybe we're a little slimy as well, but most importantly, we think we've wronged God in such a way that he can never welcome us back.
Yeah.
And he's seeking after us with angel armies to bring us back.
Yeah.
And he's graciously receiving us. And so there was a lot of power in that story to me, in the story of Jacob.
Biblical criticism looks at this and says, and as some that are doubters of the Bible and authenticity and all that, is there's so many imperfect people in it. It can't be, because, a word from God has to be perfect. Well, the stories show a perfect God, but how he deals with us Jacobs, us Israels, us people that wrestle with God and all that. It's such great news.
Yeah, and as the nation of Israel continues to grow, and we will read later, by the time Jesus comes, they've been through so many ups and downs of turning away from God. And he uses some, pretty significant measures to bring them back. But his goal is to always bring them back. And so, not trying to give away the rest of the big story, but it's a big part of it as we follow that nation.
And it's, you look at how we can, and we didn't really discuss this, but, every time someone mentioned or still mentions Israel, it's he who wrestles with God,
Yeah.
And it's like Isaac, laughter.
Yeah.
And, ha ha ha, type of thing. But, our DNA coming into Jesus in the church is wrestling with God, and guess what?
Yeah.
We still do.
And
but we don't think of the definition, we just think of the name now.
Yeah, that's a good point of Israel continued to wrestle with God throughout all of existence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you saw this week that you wanted to point out?
And back to big, a great study is to look at doxology. And we mentioned briefly this morning as we were doing our coffee and all that kind of stuff. But I love doxology because I'm I would call myself a closet charismatic. Okay. I see people that their emotions allow them to be free in their worship and sure. Whether in private or in our collective and all that. And so, when I read doxology, it's kind of like this explosion of passion and undeniability of God. Now to him who's able to do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine. And that immeasurable and the ask or imagine has such a great history of Jacob and Joseph and yes, immeasurably more. And as we look at big stuff for and from God, look for the big. Yeah. Because and let the doxology flow. He is able.
Yeah, he does big things that are immeasurably more than we could ever imagine, combining those two things there. All right. Well, what things did you guys see this week? Again, trying to keep it short and simple with these podcasts, but we want to know just kind of the start of what you might have seen. So leave those comments below. Leave them in the Facebook group that's linked below. And of course, we'll be back next week. I'm going to be sitting here with someone else. So I'll miss you, Craig, but I think I'll see you quite a bit over this next year.
Well, I look forward to that. And if you need longer podcasts, we are more than capable of going long. So...
That's true. That's very, very true. So. Well, thank you guys for being with us. We'll see you again next week right here on the Big Things from the Big Story podcast. Leave your comments below. We would love to hear what you've seen. See you next Monday.
Go big.